Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku chose another destiny part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝐒𝐿𝐵. So let's start the video. I was on my way to school, walking past the appealing parks and trees, watching the blossom fall as the wind swayed gently through the branches. I had always enjoyed that time of year, being able to walk on my own, watching nature take over. The school wasn't very far from where I lived, so the walk was always short. After 10 minutes of me trapped in my own thoughts, my eyes were set on it. 𝐻𝐸𝐲, the prestigious school known for turning out some of the best heroes. As I walked closer and closer to the school, it grew taller and taller, eventually towering over me. I didn't speak to many people just yet. That changed though when I was greeted by a small, green-haired boy. I've seen him before. In the sports festival. He was the one that made me realize I was not Endeavor's SLV. That I am my own person and the quirk was and always will be my own. The boy was probably around 5 feet 5 inches, tiny compared to me. He had dark green, unkempt hair and emerald eyes that somehow always seemed to sparkle. He was in my class and was always enthusiastic about becoming a hero. In all honesty, I never understood how he could always be so ecstatic about everything. It was like he was constantly in his own little utopia. The boy acted as if he knew me. I knew he was in my class and that we fought in the school festival, but still, we never really spoke to each other. I somewhat admired this boy. He always seemed to be so free. As we got closer to the doors, we could already hear the shouting. No doubt it was Katsuki Bakugo. The green-haired boy's face changed quick. It went from happiness to dread, as if his personal storm cloud had just appeared over his head. I had seen how Bakugo had always teased and bullied him in class, always calling him Deku, which I never truly understood. I couldn't remember his actual name, which apparently seemed to show on my face. I'm Izuku Midoriya. You haven't forgotten me already, have you? He said suddenly, as if trying to get Bakugo out of his mind. Yeah, I know. We met at the sports festival when you started to kind of lecture me about my quirk, I replied, acting as if I knew, as to not seem rude. Yeah, sorry about that, but you always seemed so depressed and never used your left side. I knew it was holding you back, so I tried to help. Sorry if it didn't, he kept apologizing. Was it a habit because of Bakugo? Was he just being kind to me because he didn't know me too well? Maybe he just didn't know he was doing it. It's okay. You don't need to keep apologizing, you actually helped me. I said. Oh really? He seemed shocked, as if he were expecting to be a burden. Yeah, you made me realize how much I was holding back. You kind of reminded me of my mother. She used to tell me the same things. Why was I saying this? Stop talking, Shoto. I mean, it doesn't matter, don't worry about it. I carried on walking so I could get away from the things I had just said. Why did I say those things? They were true, but why? They came out of my mouth before I even had a chance to stop myself. My overthinking was stopped when the boy started jogging to catch up to me. We began to walk towards the 1A room as the shouting only got louder. As I slid the giant door open, my ears were bombarded with the noise. As I took my first step in, Midoriya behind me, Bakugo span around. Stupid Deku and the half-and-half BSE. Where you been? I've been waiting for you. He grimaced and began walking towards us. I could only assume he wanted to shout at us like he was to the red-haired boy. I couldn't remember many people's names. I didn't want to. I was not there to make friends. As Bakugo approached us, Mr. Aizawa hopped through the door in his signature yellow sleeping bag. Everyone sit down before I make you, he remarked in a sluggish tone. I walked towards my desk as I watched Midoriya do the same, but pretty much on the verge of running. Why was I fascinated by this boy? It was the first proper time I had spoken to Todoroki. He was always alone, so I invited him to come and eat lunch with Yuruka, Ida and myself. Or, as Yuruka had named us, the 𝐶𝐸𝐴 squad. I wasn't sure whether or not he would actually join us. But I had high hopes and was excited to see if he would take up the offer. I hadn't yet mentioned this to Ida or Yuruka, but I was sure they wouldn't mind. Still having my hopes up, I looked around the lunch hall hoping to catch a glimpse of him. But there he is. His red and white hair stood out from the people that surrounded him. His face, though, still had a blank expression, per usual. He was sat, slurping his noodles. I assumed he just didn't want to sit with us because he didn't know us. However, just when I was about to turn back and rejoin the conversation we were having on the table, Todoroki looked up and made eye contact with me. That's a little awkward. He put down his food and placed his chopsticks next to his bowl. He stood up. But did I put him off his food? Oh wait. He was walking towards us, still with a blank expression on his face. Was he coming over to tell me to leave him alone and stop looking at him? I was sat contently eating my soba on my own. I looked up and met Midoriya's eyes on accident. They were sparkling, those emerald green eyes. They shone brighter than the stars. Before I knew what I was doing, I was already putting my food back on the tray, picking it up and walking over to his table, his words still echoing in my head. As I got closer to the table, I was planning on what I was going to say. I don't speak to people, I'm not used to interaction. I arrived at the table, still unsure on what I wanted to say. And may I sit with you? I spluttered. Midoriya smiled at me, whilst Ida and Uraraka looked on at me, slightly confused. Of course you can, that's why I offered earlier, he said with a rather large smile. I placed my tray on the table as Ida and Uraraka greeted me and introduced themselves. Ida doing so very formally as usual. The two continued their conversation as Midoriya started speaking to me. What made you change your mind? He questioned. I thought it was time for a small change, I guess, lying. I couldn't tell him it was because his eyes propelled me towards his table. What was happening to me? Why was he making me feel safe and welcome? What were these feelings? The group spoke for the entirety of lunch, sometimes including me and sometimes Midoriya breaking off from that conversation to speak to me. It was delightful, something I wasn't used to. Eventually the bell rang for lunch to end, cutting our conversation short. As we cleared our table, the group was still talking. Hey, Midoriya continued, I saw the direction you were walking today. It's the same direction I go. How about we walk together after school is over? I got a little flustered when he asked this. Sure, why not? I barely knew the boy, but he was nice and comforting. Why did I get flustered though? School had finally ended and I was waiting for Todoroki outside the gates. Should I have asked him? Was it too soon to ask? Maybe I came off a little creepy. Maybe he won't even come and has already left. Nope, I was wrong. Todoroki walked out the gates with his hands in his pockets. He looked around and finally looked down at me. Ah, there you are. I laughed without even thinking about it, my heart taking over. What is this? What just happened? We began to walk slowly away from the school quietly, the blossoms still falling. We walked past a appealing pink blossom tree. I began to jump to try and pick one of the flowers off. Todoroki stopped to observe me try and fail. I heard a little giggle. I turned around swiftly. What was that? What was what? He replied almost instantaneously, I heard that little giggle. What's so funny, huh? I joked, I didn't think I'd see anyone our age jumping to get a blossom from a tree is all. Hey, spring is my favorite time of the year, ever since I can remember. I stared into his eyes for just a moment before I realized what I was doing. I stretched up and pulled down a branch so he could grab one of the small flowers, my shirt sliding up my stomach, revealing it a small bit. I looked back down and saw the small boy picking the flowers off, full of complete joy. I felt a small warmth come over my cheeks, confused at the feeling, pulled my hand off the branch to feel my face. Midoriya span round, seeing my stomach before my shirt fell back down completely. He seemed to get flustered by the sight. Are you okay? He said. Yeah, just a little warm, I guess. I looked down at Midoriya, his messy hair flowing in the wind. He brought the flowers up to his nose and slowly inhaled, treasuring the smell. He carefully took out a small cluster of the blossoms and handed it to me. I smiled. Wow, Todoroki, I don't think I've ever seen you smile before, he said playfully. You should do it more often. No one has made me smile in years. Ever since my mother left, I don't think I could remember a single time. I looked down at him as we began to walk down the road again. What was it that was so different about this boy? As we continued to walk, we found the point where we had to split paths and head opposite ways. I waved to him politely and watched as he shouted goodbye towards me. As he started to jog away, my heart skipped a beat. I couldn't wait for tomorrow. I couldn't wait to see him again, to feel his warmth and happiness. I eventually got home after the slow walk with Todoroki. The walk was nice and relaxing. It had a sense of serenity to it. I walked through my front door, took my shoes off and hung up my coat. I shouted through to my mom, asking if she was okay. We sat down and started to eat dinner as we spoke about how our days went. Time went quite quickly and finally it was time to go upstairs and finish my schoolwork. It was morning again. I was awoken by a beeping coming from my phone. It was 6:30 a.m. I got up and headed towards the bathroom so I could have a shower. A tingle of excitement shot up my spine when I remembered that I was going to be able to see Todoroki today. I guessed it was because we were becoming friends and that I was going to be able to get to know him better. As I began to shampoo my hair, I thought to myself, I had never got that feeling about going to school before. Or even when thinking about seeing anyone. Only him. Was I catching feelings? No, that's absurd, he's just a friend, and besides, he's straight, and I'm pretty sure he has feelings for Momo. None of that matters, I don't have feelings for him anyway, so who cares who he likes and doesn't like. Let's just focus on getting to school. As I'm walking, I see Todoroki again. He's not walking though. He's just stood in the same place we split yesterday. Is he waiting for me? I woke up around half an hour before my alarm was supposed to go off. There was no point in going back to sleep, so I got up early. I had breakfast, showered, brushed my teeth and got dressed. I sat around for a little while, not knowing what to do. All I knew was that I was excited to go to school today. I had a little enthusiasm for once. Maybe it was because of that boy, Midoriya? My chest tightened thinking about the walk we shared yesterday. Although we didn't speak much, it was nice. I got up and decided to leave early so I could meet him when he was on his way to school. It only took me around 5 minutes to get to the place we split yesterday. To my surprise, I wasn't waiting long, probably around 10 minutes. I heard footsteps slowly creeping towards me. As I look up, I made eye contact with Midoriya. "Oh hi." I spluttered out, acting as if my being there wasn't intentional. He smiled, his eyes lighting up. I felt my cheeks go red. Was I catching feelings for Midoriya? No, that's absurd. He likes Uriarika. You can see how flustered he gets when he is around her. He slowly trudges up to my side and asks why I was there. I was just on my way to school and stopped to tie my shoelace. I lied. "Okay, would you like to walk together?" he asked, his cheeks turning slightly pink. My heart fluttered. I could feel my chest tighten again. "Stop it, Shoto, stop it. You don't have time to get into any friendships, never mind relationships." Despite this, I happily began to walk with him. Him being next to me again made me happy. Happier than I had been in a while. "So why were you really here?" he jokingly asked. I panicked. What do you mean? At UA High. Are you there because of your dad or are you there for yourself, to become a hero? He said as he pointed towards the school. Phew. I actually came for myself. I've looked up to All Might ever since I was a child. We got to school faster than I usually would. Maybe because I left earlier than usual, or maybe because time somehow flies when I'm with Midoriya. Either way, we were there before Ida, showing how early we were. We sat down in silence for a while before he turned around. "So, what's your favorite thing about All Might?" He spoke with excitement as if he actually cared, as if he were keeping the question in, but eventually gave up to his temptation. "It's the way he can save everyone with a smile on his face, even when everything seems rough, he saves everyone with a smile." Midoriya seemed to light up at this answer. Before the conversation could continue, other students started filing in, followed by Tenya Ida, shouting and instructing everyone to sit down in their seats. "Everyone sit down and be quiet. Mr. Aizawa will be here soon. We must upkeep his expectations and Bakugo, respect the school's furniture. We do not say on desks. IT is not what they are for." I saw Midoriya giggle to himself at these remarks. His cute giggle made me smile, accompanied by my cheeks apparently lighting up. Uriarika caught onto this. "Hey Shoto, what are you smiling at? I don't think I have ever seen you smile before." My face dropped and went back to its monotone self. Hearing Uriarika speak to me made Midoriya turn around. I had made eye contact again. This time I didn't want to look away. My cheeks lit up again, causing 𝐒𝐿𝐴 to repeat the question. Nothing, just thinking to myself, oh yeah. Whatcha blushing at then? Pretty boy. She responded. I hid my face hoping I wouldn't have to answer. However, this time Midoriya was joining in the conversation. Haha, come on 𝐒𝐿𝐴, no need to push, we don't want to scare him away. He looked down at me and smiled. That damn smile. I could look at it all day if only I had the chance. Mine and Todoroki's conversation was cut short again when people began filling into the classroom. I turned around so that I didn't burden him if he wanted to speak to someone else. This was until I heard 𝐒𝐿𝐴 teasing him. I saw him blushing, it made me smile for some reason. This triggered an idea in my mind though that maybe he liked 𝐒𝐿𝐴 instead of Momo. Why did that idea make me jealous? Was it true that I was catching feelings for Todoroki? Before I knew it, I had jumped up to stop 𝐒𝐿𝐴 from teasing him. Was this my body's way of saying that I was jealous? Or was I just being a good friend? I smiled at Todoroki as I stopped 𝐒𝐿𝐴. My heart let out a little flutter and his face went a little more red. Maybe he was just embarrassed. Ida was still telling everyone to sit down, and as we all did, Mr. Aizawa slid the door open and muttered to us, "Get your costumes and come with me." Everyone cheered and got excited, wondering what we were going to be doing. When everyone was changed, we were led onto training ground beta. Today you're going to be put into pairs and are going to be fighting each other to get some training in. I will pick the teams from random. They are as follows. Team 1, Katsuki Bakugo and Mina Ashido. Team 2, Izuka Midoriya and Shoto Todoroki. Team 3, Mezu Shoji and Kyoka Jiro. Team 4, Achako 𝐒𝐿𝐴 and Tenya Ida. Team 5, Minoru Mineta and Rikudo Sato. Team 6, Fumikage Tokoyami and Kuji Koda. Team 7, Tsuyu Azui and Denki Kaminari. Team 8, Ejiro Kirishima and Hantasiro. Team 9, Momo Yoyorozu and Toru Hagakure. Team 10, Yuga Ayama and Masahiro Ojiro. These teams will pick from a hat to see who they are against. Each match will last 30 minutes. They can either put these HNDCFFs on their opponents or can immobilize them. If I think the competitors are going too far, I will stop it before it can. Any questions? Good, let's begin. The teams that will be against each other are, again, as follows. Team 1 v Team 7, Team 2 v Team 3, Team 9 v Team 4, Team 5 v Team 8, Team 6 v Team 10. Mineta sighed, knowing that he was not teamed up with a girl and was not fighting one either. Let the games begin, announced Aizawa. The first match began, Bakugo and Mina v Tsuyu and Kaminari. As the whistle blew, Bakugo instantly used his quirk to propel himself through the air, like an eagle searching for its prey. Mina followed his lead and ran after him so that she could help him when their opponents were found. Suddenly, Mina was thrown toward a wall by Tsuyu's tongue and was handcuffed almost instantly. Bakugo, being so focused on finding his opponents, did not remember that Tsuyu could climb up walls and could somewhat camouflage. Only 2 minutes later, Bakugo found Kaminari. Bakugo hurtled himself towards Kaminari, catching him off guard. "Found you, dumb Pikachu!" he screamed. Kaminari had no chance. He was bombarded with explosions, no pun intended, to the face. Bakugo shouted for Mina to come out and handcuff him whilst he was down. No response. 𝐻𝐸𝐽𝐽 idiotic raccoon eyes probably got herself lost or captured. Bakugo took Kaminari's HNDCFFs and was about to eliminate him from the match. Unbeknownst to Bakugo, Tsuyu was already climbing the wall behind him, slowly extending her tongue so that she could use the other pair of cuffs on him. Bakugo grabbed Tsuyu's tongue and yanked her towards himself. After he had finally handcuffed Kaminari, Bakugo took the HNDCFFs off of Tsuyu's tongue and began to handcuff her too. "There, done, all on my own. Make it harder next time, instead of placing me with these extras. It'll take you all on if I have TO. Bakugo's team wins," says Aizawa unenthusiastically. Next up is Midoriya's team against Jiro's team. My palms began to sweat as I knew it was my turn. My opponents didn't seem that difficult, compared to who I had on my team, one of the best and hottest players in the class. I shouldn't be thinking like that though. He's just a teammate, but for some reason, some part of me wished there could be more. I looked over at Todoroki, for confidence if nothing else. His hair blew softly in the wind, showing of the vibrant colors and his contrasting eyes. He was taller than me by quite a bit, yet he wasn't intimidating, he was comforting. His eyes stared into my own, making my spine tingle. "We've got this," he said with a warming smile as he activated his right side. 3, 2, 1, begin. Aizawa said with no energy or enthusiasm. I already knew what the other team's first move would be. 𝐔𝐬𝐽 was going to use her boots to let out a sonic blast either into the floor or would find us and deafen us with it. I told Todoroki my plan. "First, I think our best move is to use your ice to form a ramp up to the top of the building. That way, we can see part of the training field from, without them being able to find us straight away." It also meant that it would be more difficult for 𝐔𝐬𝐽 to use her sonic blast without destroying the building. Midoriya began to explain his plan on how we could win. I loved the way his brain worked. It was fast, precise, and smart. Ever since I met him, his battle plans were smart and he was able to adapt when they didn't go his way. He demonstrated it in the sports festival when he figured out why I constantly had ice behind me and why I kept using the larger ice barricades. His mind was one of the reasons I was attracted to him. But it doesn't change the fact I know I can't have him. As predicted, we were able to see 𝐔𝐬𝐽 and Shoji running towards us. Midoriya began his cute mumbling again, talking about what our next strategy would be. Before he noticed them, the other team had spotted us. I already knew Shoji's tail would be an issue here, and 𝐔𝐬𝐽's gloves. Shoji began to use his tail to hop up and swing over poles, slowly projecting himself higher and higher, holding his teammate as he went. As they grew closer, I began to worry that Midoriya had not spotted them yet. I knew I would be able to stop them easily, but I didn't want 𝐔𝐬𝐽's boots to be able to penetrate through my ice or our eardrums. I didn't want Midoriya to get hurt. I carefully but swiftly grabbed his waist and used the ice I had already made to slide back down to the floor. I blushed as we slid down the cold ramp. This sudden movement snapped Midoriya back into focus and made him realize he didn't have much time at all to plan ahead. Suddenly he began to slightly shout over to me. "On the ground, 𝐔𝐬𝐽 is the strongest opponent. She can control her quirk well enough to destroy the floor we're standing on. Mid-air is where 𝐔𝐽𝐽 is going to be strongest. He will be able to use his tail to project himself into the air and will be able to swing off of the many lampposts and poles that are at his disposal. I think our best bet is for you to take down 𝐔𝐽𝐽 with your ice and I take down 𝐔𝐽𝐽 mid-air with the use of my legs." He looked over to me with his appealing green eyes and smiled. It melted my heart. It was too late. 𝐔𝐽𝐽 had already managed to plug her earphone jacks into her boot and had already began to use her quirk. She was aiming it at Midoriya, hoping to immobilize him. Whist! 𝐔𝐽𝐽 came for me. I could see the pain in Midoriya's eyes as blood began to drip down the side of his face. I knew I had to do something. But what? Think Shoto. He began to cry and scream of pure pain. Why hadn't Aizawa stopped her yet? My heart was shattering and I knew I had to do something to save my precious boy from her. 𝐤𝐽𝐽 was already mid-air. I used my ice to grab his tail and hold him in place. I then went for 𝐔𝐽𝐽, but she saw this and knew she had to redirect her boots. I felt the pain caress my eardrums almost instantly. Midoriya tried to rise to his feet as I began to crumble from the pain. I knew I had to stop it before I went deaf. I let go of my ear so I could freeze the ground. I couldn't move. The pain began to paralyze me. The pain began to drain away. All the time I was focused on trying to take down 𝐔𝐽𝐽, Midoriya had managed to cuff 𝐤𝐽𝐽 and kick 𝐔𝐽𝐽 into the ground. He was amazing. I knew I had to do something when I saw Todoroki being pelted with the constant sonic waves protruding from 𝐔𝐽𝐽's boots. As she was turned the other way, I was able to put the HNDCFFS on her teammate. I then called a 10% full cowling and kicked her in the stomach, accidentally being too rough and knocking her completely to the floor. I broke both legs whilst doing so. Her ear jacks rapidly swung back up to her ears and I cuffed her almost instantly. I ran over to Todoroki as fast as I could. He looked at me with love in his eyes. I helped him stand up carefully with a smile on my face, but as I did so, I collapsed. I woke up later in Recovery Girl's office. Apparently the pain in my ears and legs had become too much and I passed out. I looked over to my right and saw Todoroki holding my hand with both of his. Apparently he had been there for a while because he was asleep. "You've been here for a few days and have only been drifting in and out of consciousness. He's been here the entire time," said Recovery Girl with a surprised, yet serious tone. "He looks so peaceful when he's asleep. I could look at him forever. Lately, I've realized that it hurt to think about Todoroki being with someone else. It hurt to think about him with anyone other than me. I know this sounded selfish, but I couldn't help it. I knew I was going to have to admit my feelings at some point, but I just had to figure out the right time." Todoroki had began to shuffle a little, slowly waking up and revealing the bags under his eyes. I felt guilty that he was here and guilty that I couldn't protect him. I wanted to be his knight in shining armor. I wanted to make him feel safe. Todoroki sat up, his hair falling in front of his face. My heart skipped a beat. He was so cute. As he began to realize what was happening, he pulled his hands away and began to rub his neck. "Sorry about that." I sat up and turned to look at him. "No, it's okay. I'm glad you're here." I pulled his right hand towards me again for the warmth. I have something to tell you, Todoroki. We were alone, so I felt this was a better time than any." When I was about to start my confession, however, Recovery Girl walked in and interrupted. "Come on, out of here so I can do my final checkup," she ordered. Todoroki got up and slowly walked out, giving me a comforting smile before he walked out the door. His smile warmed my heart, and it was the only thing I could think about whilst Recovery Girl was completing the final examination. "You can leave today, you should be fine, just don't get yourself hurt again anytime soon or I won't help you." She tapped me on the hair with a piece of rolled up paper. As I walked out the room, Todoroki was there, still waiting for me with a small smile on his face, highlighting his twinkling eyes. He accompanied me to lunch and watched over me the entire day, maybe to make sure I didn't do anything stupid or something that could get me hurt. He was taking care of me. He had finally woken up and I was given the task of taking care of him so he didn't do anything stupid or anything that could get him hurt. I got to spend the entire day with him and I couldn't ask for anything better. It was eventually time to go home. I asked Todoroki if he wanted to walk with me again today. "Of course I will. I've got to look after you, remember. Maybe I can even walk you home," he asked, looking down at me. "I'd love that, but are you sure it won't be too much of a hassle or a burden?" "Oh come on, Midoriya. You could never cause me a hassle or a burden. I love taking care of you today. I don't mind doing it for a bit longer," he said with an easing tone. Wow, I've never felt so welcome or comfortable. I need this boy in my life. I need to tell him how I feel. And LT, when we got to Midoriya's door, I was flooded with mixed emotions, some happy that he was safe at home and some sad that we couldn't be together for much longer. As he opened the door, he was greeted by his mother. "Oh hi dear, you must be Shoto Todoroki. I've heard a lot about you." "All good things I hope," I said, trying not to blush. "Oh of course, I haven't heard a single bad thing about you," she replied. My efforts were quashed and my face lit up. "Thank you for taking care of him. The lady that took care of him, Recovery Girl I think her name was, wouldn't let me take him home and wouldn't let me stay there overnight. How about to thank you for your efforts, you come in and have dinner." I looked over at Midoriya to see his opinion on what I should do. He showed a small yet cute smile and nodded his head slightly. "Sure, I'd love to," I smiled thankfully. "Great, I've heard your favorite is soba cold." I looked down at Midoriya again, who was now rubbing the back of his neck and blushing out of embarrassment. I gave him a little giggle for remembering the small details about me. "I love this boy." My mother invited Todoroki in for dinner today after he walked me home. It was nice. He laughed and smiled a lot more than usual, which made my heart melt. As the sun was setting, Todoroki eventually had to go home, so his sister didn't worry. As I saw him out and walked him to the door, he thanked me for a lovely night. Although I think mine was better because I had an excuse to look into those appealing mismatched eyes. I stood on the doorstep so I could see him walk down the path, but as the door slowly shut behind me, Todoroki stared at me as if he could see into my soul. He took a few steps closer to me and whispered in my ear. "Oh, one more thing." He brought his face from next to my ear so it was right in front of mine. Slowly, he got closer and closer and perched his lips onto my own. They were warm and soft. My eyes widened, not knowing what to do. I thought he liked Momo. I thought he was straight. He pulled back after he realized I wasn't kissing back. "Oh, I'm sorry Midoriya, I didn't mean to, I just needed to kiss you. I want you and I know you're into 𝐸𝐸𝐺 but I couldn't hold it in any longer. I love you Izuku and if you don't love me back, that's fine. I just need you in my life. I need you here." He began to trail off and blush violently. As he looked up slowly, I couldn't help but smile. Those eyes, they were appealing, contrasting each other, yet working in perfect harmony. I whispered, "Todoroki?" He looked up at me, still blushing. "I need you with me. I thought you liked Momo so I tried to restrict myself but after what you just did, I can't help it." I dragged his face towards my own and kissed him slowly. I could feel his quirk taking over as I felt his right side getting colder but his left getting hotter at the same time. I could stay like this forever. This boy completes me. The next day, as I was on my way to school, Todoroki stood in the same place we met before. He was distracted, picking blossom off the trees above him. Wow, what an appealing sight. As I got closer, he noticed me. "Let's go, shall we?" I asked. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, not so fast there." He grabbed my wrist and pulled me back with a twirl. "You can't kiss me the way you did last night and not do anything about it now." "I'm not sure what you're on about," I said with a smirk so he'd kiss me again. "Oh yeah? Yep, no clue, well we'll have to change that then." He grabbed me by my waist, hoisted me up to his stomach and as I wrapped my legs around his own waist, he kissed me with more passion than the night before. But he held me there for a while, staring into my eyes. I stared back and would do it all day if I could. As he slowly put me down he teased me, "Well I hope you remember that one because you're not getting it again," he said looking down at me. "We'll see about that," I joked back. As we were walking out of school again, Todoroki gently grabbed me by my wrist down a road I hadn't been down before. He pulled me close to him and said, demandingly, "You're coming my house tonight and I don't care what you say." My face lit up more. The depth and confidence he asserted made my heart flutter. It's like he was everything I was not. Confident, assertive and the depth is an extra positive. As we walked to his house, he grabbed my hand and kissed it ever so gently. "I love you," he reminded me, making me blush again. I turned to him. "I never knew I could feel this way about a boy but then you came and swept me off my feet, and I will forever be grateful." When we got to his house, I was introduced to his siblings, Fuyumi and Natsuo. They were nice, funny, playful and inviting. "This is my boyfriend, Izuku Midoriya," he said out of nowhere. The two siblings stopped what they were doing and looked over at me. I looked up at Todoroki and smiled. I liked that title. It made me warm inside, like it was mine and I was meant to have it. I looked over at the other two and gave an innocent smile. They walked over to me. Oh, was I about to be kicked out? Shouted at? Beaten up? They both looked at each other, then looked at me and started to bend down to make eye contact. "He's adorable and I'm glad you finally connected with someone," said Fuyumi, boosting my confidence a little. "If you ever hurt him," continued Natsuo, "I can't do much because my quirk isn't too strong, but boy if it was," I gulped. "I still wouldn't do anything because from what I've heard today, you don't seem like you do that, and it seems like Shoto really likes you." Todoroki rolled his eyes and giggled. "Come on Midoriya, let's go upstairs." He holds my hand and leads me upstairs. I look down to smile at his brother and sister. They make kissing faces mockingly and I can't help but laugh a little. When we get upstairs, Todoroki leads me to his room and opens the door. Wow, it was so neat and tidy. His bed was in the corner next to the window. A work table sat in the opposite corner, accompanied by a chair. A wardrobe stood a few feet away from it. He motions me to sit down on his bed. I hesitate, still admiring his room. He stood up again and pulls me over, pushing me onto the bed. I look up at him, admiring his cute face and his sparkling eyes. But I pulled him onto my bed and stared down at his face, his appealing freckles being lit up by his bright red cheeks. I leant down and kissed his cheeks slowly, moving down to his neck. He giggled, making me look up. I kissed his soft lips, making him go bright red again. I hear a shout from downstairs. "We have to go shopping, we'll be back in around 2 hours. Don't wreck the house while we're gone." I smiled and looked back at Izuku. Perfect. We seem to be all alone, he smirked, making me smile too. I pin his arms down with my hands and begin to kiss his neck again. He groans a little in joy. I smile and carry on, placing small kisses on his neck, slowly moving down to his chest. He manages to flip me round and sits on my stomach. He pulls my face closer to his own, planting a small kiss on my lips. He goes to pull away, but I bring my face closer to his again and kissed him slowly. His lips were inviting, beckoning me to stay. He followed my lead and copied what I had done. He slowly began to move down my neck, kissing me left and right. I forgot about the outside world. Forgot about everyone and everything. As my heart begins to race faster, I accidentally activate my quirk on both sides, shocking 𝐿𝐼𝐫, causing him to stumble back and fall off the bed. I snapped back into reality and realized what had just happened. My left side had taken over more than my right. No, did I burn him? Please 𝐒𝐻𝑝 be alright. Please 𝐿𝐼𝐫, be alright. I speed to the end of the bed and look down at him on the floor. He was holding his right arm close to his body. Please. Did I burn him? He looked up at me with a cute smile. I still couldn't tell whether or not he was hurt. Wow, I really got you there, didn't I, pretty boy? He joked. I didn't even have to take your shirt off. Your fire did it for me. He lets go of his arm, and it had slight marks, but I couldn't tell if it was from me or if it was scars from past injuries. He climbed up slowly onto the bed, trying to take the other half of my shirt off. No, please, let me check you. Did I hurt you? Oh, so you want me to take my shirt off first then? Fine by me. Was it the adrenaline? Did I burn him and he can't feel it because of the adrenaline, or was he okay? I checked over his chest, no signs of any burns. I was scared to look at his right arm, but knew I had to. I picked it up gently just in case. As I did this, he kissed my cheek gently. You could never hurt me, Todoroki. You do realize that, don't you? He said in a comforting tone. Even if you did, I wouldn't care. I'd love you no matter what, and I always will. I sighed in relief and moved over to the end of the bed. How can I love someone when I can't even control my quirk around them? I like how you were gentle, you always are. He kissed my half-exposed back. I stand up. I'm going to go and get some water. Want anything while I'm down there? I asked while still slightly trembling from the fact that I did almost burn him. No, I'm okay, thanks, he replied, still upholding his adorable smile. When I come back upstairs, I see his face. I had scolded it. How did I not realize before? I was so worried about his arm, I didn't even realize that it would have been his face to get hurt. No. Shoto, you're such an idiot. He's hurt. You hurt him. I began to tear up. Izuku, I'm so sorry. Please, are you okay? I never meant to, please. Forgive me. I felt Shoto starting to struggle and mutter. It wakes me up a bit. I turn around to look at his face. He was crying. Please, Izuku. He murmured, please be okay. Just as I was about to shake him to wake him up, he jumped up and began to hyperventilate. He was covered in a cold sweat, something I'd never seen happen to him. I touch his back to try and comfort him, but he jumps as my hand touched his skin. He turns around and looks me in the eyes, tears forming heavily in his own. You're okay, he exclaims, his tears now rolling down his cheek and hitting his leg. He grabbed me and squeezed me as hard as he could. I'm so sorry, you didn't do anything, Shoto, you were dreaming. What's wrong? I spluttered whilst being somewhat suffocated. I burned you, I'm so sorry, I never meant to. It just took over, he sobbed. I pushed him away from me slowly and gently, looked him in the eyes and kissed his forehead. Don't worry, Shoto, it was just a dream. Look, I'm okay. He looked up and wiped away his tears, inspecting my body. It's okay, I'm fine, let's go back to sleep. I switched positions so that he was now lying on my chest. Soon enough, I heard his small, adorable snores. His heart was regulating again, he'd calmed down and had fallen asleep. The rhythmic patterns of his breath slowly but surely sent me to sleep. The next morning, I woke up on my own. I was in his bed but he was gone. I stood up, put my shirt on and made my way downstairs. It was a Saturday, so we didn't have to go to you. Today. Oh, what's that smell? I said, taking a big whiff of the air. Smells amazing. As I walked into the kitchen, I wasn't greeted by the person I was expecting. Shoto was sat on the stool in the kitchen, head in his hands. Nice to meet you properly, Izuku Midoriya. My name is Enji. My heart stopped. Endeavor. He was stood in the kitchen and turned around to look at me. Does he know about me and Shoto? Did Fuyumi or Natsuo tell him? My thoughts were interrupted by his deep, booming voice. I hope you like pancakes, he said, his voice echoing through the kitchen, startling Shoto. Shoto didn't want to tell his father just yet. What am I going to say to him? I was expecting the worst when he placed a plate down in front of me, with a bang. Again, this startled Shoto, yet he didn't take his head away from his hands. This made me panic even more. I looked down at the plate that was just placed before me and then looked back at Endeavor's face. Hello sir, it's nice to meet you. He stared me down, giving me a vicious look. So what were you doing with my son last night, Midoriya? What do you mean? I said flustered. Well, you stayed here last night, didn't you? So what did you do with my son? Well, we just hung out and watched a movie. Sure, so why does he look like that? He said, slightly pointing over at Todoroki. I looked over at him. His eyes were bloodshot and he had black bags under them. I began to worry. What happened to him? Is he okay? Did his dream affect him that much? Dad, leave him alone. I just had a bad dream is all and I couldn't get back to sleep, he interrupted. Well then, care to share what it was about? Endeavor bellowed, again his voice echoing throughout the kitchen. Todoroki had flashbacks to the joy his dream started out to be, but the good thoughts were penetrated by the horror it turned out to be for him. Todoroki's PV. I had come downstairs early to the sound of my father banging around in the kitchen, looking for the frying pan. Midoriya was still asleep, so I left him alone so he could get some more rest. Last night was horrible. After that nightmare, I couldn't get back to sleep, and when I did manage to, I just woke up again and again. The thought of the start of the dream was amazing and still managed to make my heart skip and turn my face go red. It was amazing. The fear that came after though, I'm not sure if I can trust myself around Izuku after what I saw. What if it happened for real? As I walked downstairs, my father already seemed as if he were in a bad mood. He turned around to look at me, staring me down as per usual. To him, I was just a pawn in his little games with All Might, but today he seemed different. I sat down on a stool and leaned on the table in front of me, putting my head in my hands out of exhaustion. When he noticed this, he sat down in front of me. I saw those shoes at the door. They're not yours, not mine, and aren't any of your siblings. Whose are they and why are they here? I was too tired to uphold too many lies. They're Midoriya's, I said with no gusto. And who's that? He spat. He's a boy from school. You saw him at the sports festival, remember? Izuku Midoriya. Oh, I remember him, short boy, green messy hair, he asked, genuinely seeming intrigued. Yep, that's the one, I smiled. And he's here why, exactly? Me being tired meant I couldn't process what I was saying fast enough. We're dating, no? Please tell me I didn't just say that. Not to Endeavor. I looked up, shocked with myself, and saw the same look on his face. Why, you're what? Dating, I stuttered. Fear enveloped my heart, but it was still fluttering a little knowing that I was dating him. Well, if I'm being perfectly honest, I wasn't expecting that, he muttered. I slowly looked at him, realizing what might happen when Izuku ended up coming downstairs. Dad turned around and picked up the saucepan he was looking for previously. We both went quiet, neither of us knowing what to say. Do you want some pancakes, Shoto? He asked, trying to change the subject. Sure, I said, putting my head back in my hands, contemplating what I was going to tell Izuku. I heard the pancakes sizzle softly, filling the kitchen slowly with their sweet scent. I was sat quietly, my father again silent too. That is, until, oh, what's that smell? Smells amazing. Midoriya was coming down the stairs. What were you doing with my son, Izuku Midoriya? As he asked the question and continued to interrogate him, I kept my eyes down, not knowing what to do. Eventually, I pulled my head out of my hands and looked at my father's face. I could see the humor in his eyes, but out of fear, Izuku couldn't. He was toying with him. Was he okay with the fact we are dating? He seemed to be happy enough to make him pancakes, although he placed the plate down rather aggressively. I think it's all part of the act. Come on, Dad, Don't tease him. 𝐒𝐿 looked over at me in confusion and relief. I get up and walk over to him to whisper in his ear. He knows. I continue walking to get myself some tea and watch the rest of the act unfold. Endeavor stood there smirking, whilst 𝐒𝐿 sat there still confused and scared. Endeavor burst out laughing, his joy being expressed through the flames coming from his facial hair. He got up and walked over to 𝐒𝐿, who still sat there in disbelief as he got picked up in a big hug. "Oh, you seem to make my Shoto happy, so I'll welcome you in with open arms." He leaned in closer to my ear. "If you hurt him, I'll rain hellfire on you and will go after the man you admire most in the world." "Shoto?" I questioned, gaining a confused look from both Endeavor and his son. "Smart move," he whispered, "but if you hurt that boy, you'll have hell to pay." Putting me down slowly after almost suffocating me, I took a few steps back to get some air. After breakfast was over, Endeavor got dressed and told us that he had to leave to meet with the other pro heroes. After he walked out the door and began his walk down the path, Shoto grabbed my hands and led me back upstairs into his room, just like he did before we fell asleep whilst watching a film the night before. I could tell he was feeling a mix of emotions. The main ones I could make out were nervousness, relief, and excitement. But why was he nervous? Maybe the dream he had. He never fully explained it. Maybe he would just rather not speak about it. I continued to follow his lead with him guiding me by my hand. He pushed me onto the bed, but this time, he didn't take out his laptop. He wasn't starting up a film. What's happening? I wanted this boy. His hair after he had just woke up, teaming up with his freckles and slightly pink cheeks. It was all enticing. He was effortlessly enticing. I jumped onto him, pinning him down and kissing his cheek. I pulled his face towards me so I could kiss his lips. My heart started pounding. I need him. Todoroki. I stopped and looked down at him. Oh no, was I pressuring him into something he didn't want to do? He looked up at me with those adorable, vibrant green eyes. Sorry, I stuttered back. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable or force you into something. I'm sorry, what's wrong? He asked, sitting up. You never told me what that dream was about. It looks like it's still affecting you. I know it scared you, but do you want to tell me about it? How did he know it was still affecting me? I was trying to hide it and move past it. I looked down and started fiddling with my fingers. We were together, I said, slowly looking at him. We were here, in the room, but things got a little crazy and we were having a little fun, but then my quirk, it took over. You were startled and fell back. He was listening intently, with sympathy in his eyes. I continued, you fell off the bed, holding your arm, but it wasn't burnt when I thought it could have been. When I saw you were okay, I went downstairs to get some water. When I came back up, your face, it was all burnt. Tears began to form in my eyes again. I never meant to hurt you, 𝐒𝐿. I never want to hurt you, tears falling down my face now. I'm so sorry. Midoriya began to giggle a little. You're upset because you had a dream about something that never happened? I looked at him again, wiping my eyes but still feeling regret. He pulled me towards him and kissed me ever so gently. I know you'd never hurt me, it's okay. There's no need to be afraid or tense when I'm around. I'm going to be your knight in shining armor like you were for me, he said whilst flexing his muscles. I giggled at the sight of this. He's the only one that's been able to make me laugh in a while. My tension slowly flowed away as 𝐒𝐿 pulled me onto his chest and embraced me in his arms. The rhythmic beating of his heart and the slow flow of his breathing soothed me. He had gone back to sleep. No doubt he was exhausted. It was nice having him with me, to hold. He was soft and adorable. Hours had passed and Shoto was still asleep. That nightmare must have really took a toll on him. I pull my phone and look at the time. 12:49. I'm glad it was the weekend. I got to spend all day with him, the best it could ever be. As I went to put my phone back down, Shoto started to shuffle and groan a little. I must have woken him up when I took my phone out. 𝐒𝐿, you're still here? I heard him murmur. Yeah, it's me, I'm here. I'll always be here, I replied whilst stroking his hair gently. What's the time? He groaned whilst rubbing his eyes. 12:50, I said back to him. I suppose it's time to get up then, he replied with a tiny giggle. Have any good dreams this time? I asked to try and make a conversation and wake him up a little bit. I was with you walking through the park, past the lake. It was amazing. My heart melted as his eyes glistened up at me. He's so amazing. When I woke up, Izuku was still there, holding me in his arms. I never wanted to leave them. But when I told him about the dream I had, I knew I had to take him there. We got dressed and went to his house so he could check in on his mom and get a clean pair of clothes. Mrs. Midoriya seemed happy to see me and greeted me with open arms. I'm not too sure if she knows yet, but I'm guessing she found out when Izuku came down the stairs and kissed my lips saying he was ready to leave. I think he did it subconsciously because when he turned around, he and his mom were both stood there in shock. Well then, I stuttered, Mom, you know Todoroki. Well Izuku, I'm so happy for you. I was wondering when you were going to get together. She said, pure excitement pouring from her lips. I turned around to Shoto, who had a small smile on his mouth. I already knew what he was thinking. You're not a very good liar anyway, Midoriya, I thought in his voice. I roll my eyes playfully at him, smiling, and then turn around to my mother. Thanks, Mom, I giggled. We have to go though. Todoroki's taking me somewhere special. A grin came over my face as I said it. As we walk away from my house, my mother waving us goodbye, Todoroki grabs my hand, intertwining his fingers in my own. I thought about this moment, knowing I had to treasure it. We walked past the appealing trees that were still dropping pink blossoms next to our feet, the ones that united us together in the very beginning. We spoke about the things that we loved in the world. I mentioned Katsudon as he mentioned his cold soba, and of course we both mentioned each other. And time skip because this is boring for you to read and boring for me to write, and when we got back to my house my mom had gone to work. She sometimes worked night shifts on the weekend. I never understood how she did it. This meant it was just me and Todoroki in the house. As we both took our shoes off and put on our slippers, I suggested we could watch a film in the main room. I turn around and ask him if he had anything he wanted in particular. You, he said with a DMT tone. I hid my face as it began to blush. He grabbed my throat and pushed me onto the couch, my slippers falling off as I fell. He caressed my inner thigh whilst kissing my neck. I felt my heart racing. He moved up to my face and made eye contact with me, our breath blending together. You ready? He asked, a glint in his eye. I nodded quietly, not knowing what he was going to do. He grabbed the bottom of my shirt and began to pull it up my chest and slowly over my head. He then pinned my arms down. I couldn't move. I didn't want to move. He stuck his tongue out and slowly moved it down my chest. I felt my heart beating even faster. How did this feel so good? I tried to move to kiss him back, but he just held my wrists down tighter. He stopped his tongue at my abs and looked up at me again. My face was hot and I could feel the pleasure coursing through my veins. He laughed seductively and let go of my wrists. He hooked his hand around my belt and pulled me onto him. I grabbed his hair and began to kiss him. I couldn't stop myself. I pulled his shirt over his head and threw it onto the ground next to us. The room grew hotter and hotter, our bodies heating it up. He pushed me away from himself and smirked. Dimen that smirk, that CC smirk. As I go to jump back at him to kiss him, he held his distance, still smirking at me. I looked at him confused. He stood up and looked down at me, asserting demps. He looked even further down, at my crotch, and begins to giggle. I look down and see I may have got a little too excited. I'd let this boy do anything to me. Oh my god, I got 1K views, thank you so much. Thank you.